In my personal opinion, jumping is one of the most exciting things you can do with your horse. What I thought I'd do in today's video is walk you through the process of how you can start jumping your horse. Let's talk about what you need to get started with jumping. So the first thing you're going to want to need is another person with you. So whether it's an instructor or maybe you're practicing outside of your lesson, make sure you have a parent or a friend or a spouse with you. And this is just safety reasons. Jumping can be a little bit more risky, and so it's a good idea to just have a second person on hand. One of the most important things to have when it comes to jumping is a riding helmet. Like I mentioned earlier, jumping can be a little bit more risky, so just having a helmet on your head as you're riding is an important safety factor. Before you start jumping, you want to make sure you're comfortable at the trot and the canter first. And the reason for this is if you're comfortable at those gaits, you're probably going to have a bit more of an independent seat compared to when you start jumping. If you don't have a good seat and you're not secure in the saddle, you can get really off balance. So you want to make sure you can trot and canter and feel comfortable about it first. And another thing to keep in mind is before you start jumping, you always want to make sure you do a really good warm-up with your horse beforehand. So that could be 15 to 20 minutes of walk, trot, cantering, and just letting your horse stretch and warm up their muscles before you start jumping. And that way, by warming up your horse, you're going to do all you can to avoid injury for your horse since their muscles are going to be warmed up. Before we start jumping, let's talk about the rider's position they need to get in when jumping. This is the jump position, and it's called the 2-point. And the reason for that is because there's 2 points of contact with the horse when you're in this position. So when you're in this position, your 2 points of contact are both of your legs. So your butt is not going to be a point of contact. I'm going to break down each bit of this position for you, and we'll start with your stirrups. Your stirrups are usually going to be shorter for jumping than they would be for flat work. So a good rule of thumb is that for jumping, you want your stirrup to hit your ankle bone if your foot is out of the stirrup. And so that's where I have these. Then that way you have a nice bend to your knee, and it just allows you the mobility you need to get out of the saddle when you're jumping. With your legs, you still want your heel to stay under your hip, even when you're more so leaning forward out of the saddle. And you always want to keep a bend in your knee. I remember when I first learned to jump, I thought the jump position was like this, and you're supposed to keep your legs straight. But no, you want a bend in your knee, and you're gonna kind of pick your butt out of the saddle. Remember, it's 2 points, so your 2 points of contact are your legs, but you're not gonna be standing up like this. Remember, we want a bend in our knee. So even if you're just rocking more forward on your crotch, that's more so the 2-point. And the reason for this is if you're way out of the saddle, you're gonna become unstable if your horse is to take a weird move or trip or something like that. The other point to the 2-point is your waist. So what are you doing with your waist? I like to think of you're just closing your angle of your waist. And so you're gonna bring your chest forward, still keeping your shoulders back. You're not laying on your horse's neck like this. You're just closing your waist a little bit with your bottom already out of the saddle. The next bit is your hands. You can just bring your hands up to like the mid-neck of your horse, and you can rest your hands on the neck. You don't want to be leaning on them, or if your horse drops your head, you're going to fall off. But you can bring your hands up, and this is going to help you maintain your chest forward, bend at the waist. But remember, we're not dropping our shoulders. We're still sitting up and keeping our shoulders back. So before you start jumping, you can practice your 2-point at a walk, trot, and canter. And Tucker's like, you're saying trot, that means trot. And this way, this is just going to help you get the independent seat you need for jumping, and it's going to help you strengthen those muscles that you need to be more secure over the jump. So your legs and your core, and it's a great workout. Once you can walk, trot, canter in the 2-point and feel secure, now it's time to start jumping. So we're going to start with a cross rail, and that's what's right in front of us. And with the cross rail, you'll notice that the center is the lowest point. And so it's just more inviting for the horse to go through the center. So as a new jumper, you don't really have to worry as much about steering. You can just kind of let the horse go through the middle. We're going to trot our first jump, and starting out, I'm just going to ride up to the jump already in my 2-point. So let me pick up my trot. And this way, you're not going to have to worry about your position or anything. All you're doing at this point is holding this position and hanging on. I'm gonna go up to the jump, keep shoulders back. Good. Coming up to the jump, and then all you have to do is hold that position. Once you've practiced approaching the jump already in your 2-point, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until the jump to get into my 2-point. So I'm just going to post trot normal up into the jump and then get my 2-point at the jump. The biggest thing to remember with this is a lot of times you may feel like you want to just get down like this once you get to the jump, but remember, we want to stay light in our 2-point. So all you're really going to do is close your waist and bend at your waist. By bending at your waist and putting your hands forward on the neck, that gives your horse the ability to come up to you and then for you to move more with the horse. Over a smaller jump, your waist isn't going to bend as much. Over a bigger jump, since the horse is really coming up to you, your waist may bend more. Okay, so I'm just going to sit up and post all the way to my jump, and when I get to the base of the jump, I'll get in my 2-point. Good boy. So I'll just come back this way. I'm going to post, post, post. Good boy. Once you can trot a jump on a horse and once you feel comfortable with that, then you're always going to move on to cantering the jumps. Cantering can give your horse more of a momentum, so if you're jumping big jumps, it's best to canter towards them. With cantering, it can be initially a little bit more tricky just because now you're having to worry about your horse's stride to the jump and where your horse is taking off and whether they need to adjust their stride so you don't get too close to the jump or too far away when they take off. But since you're just starting out, I would say that's not something you really need to worry about. If you're on a trusty lesson horse, that's something your instructor can introduce to you and talk to you more about. So initially when you're cantering, once again, if you just start in your 2-point coming up to the jump, that way you're already in that solid position. So whether the horse takes off long or they take off close to the jump or they're perfect, you're already in that position ready to go, and hopefully you won't be thrown off too much by the movement. So I'm already in my 2-point, and that way I can just hang on. So I'm going to show you what it's like to take off long. That was a bit of a longer spot. And then with a shorter spot, we're going to get really close to the jump. So that was a lot closer. Next, I want to share with you some helpful tips I've learned when it comes to jumping. And hopefully these tips will just help you feel more secure in the saddle and just more confident in general when jumping. First and foremost, you always want to look up and past your jump. So you want to look through the center of your jump and out past it. Because if you're looking at your jump as you're approaching it, your horse is going to tell you're looking down and that you're communicating, you're not confident or quite sure of this object. So that's going to make your horse feel the same. So by looking up and through, you're going to communicate confidence to your horse, and also it's going to be more easier to find your stride. If you're jumping a jump that your horse takes off awkwardly to, or maybe they really over jump it, one way you can secure yourself in the saddle and also make sure you're not going to catch your horse in the mouth is by grabbing mane. So if I'm in my 2-point and my hands are planted here and my horse takes off weird, I can just suddenly wrap my fingers in their mane and it just gives me a little bit more of a grip. So if I get flung back in the saddle, I'm not going to pull on my horse's mouth, and it's kind of securing me in my position. So grabbing mane has saved my butt a bunch, and I highly recommend you do it. A point of equitation to make sure you look good jumping is to fold your elbows in when you're bending at your waist and the horse is jumping, and not out. By actually folding your elbows in when the horse comes up to you, it's actually securing your position more compared to if you're like this and you're going to lean more on the horse's neck potentially. I used to have a bad habit of jumping with my elbows out, so I really practice bending at my elbow and at my waist when my horse comes up to me. I know there's a lot of pesky lesson horses out there that may have an inclination to run out of a jump or stop. One thing you can do to help give your horse more confidence approaching the jump and to keep them from running out is to widen your hands at your approach. By widening your hands, you're kind of give your horse a block from dropping their shoulder one way or another, and that way you can just ride forward with wide hands, and it's going to help you steer towards the center of the jump more so that the horse can't drift one way or another. So you can approach with wide hands, and then when you get to the jump, you can put your hands back to resting on the neck. But this is a real good lifesaver, especially if you're approaching a jump you can tell your horse is unsure about. Wide hands is key. As you start learning how to jump, you may hear things about instructors saying, well, you need to tell your horse when to take off. And you may be wondering, well, how do I do that? And the answer to that is your leg. So if you're approaching a jump and you can see your spot, you can squeeze your leg and encourage your horse to jump at that point by just giving them a little kick or giving them a squeeze. That will really help you and your horse communicate as you approach the jump and help your horse feel more confident as to what they're supposed to do when they get there. Probably the most frustrating thing about jumping is finding your stride at the canter. So you want to make sure you're taking off at the perfect distance at the canter, and getting that distance can be really confusing. One thing you can do to help yourself is as you approach the jump, as you're about 5 to 4 strides out from the jump, start counting your horse's stride. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and ideally you'll take off at your last count. The reason counting your strides is so important is that it helps you see ahead of time where your horse may take off. So when you start counting, you may be able to see, okay, here's where I need to take off. Or you may see, all right, I know that I'm going to take off long or I'm going to take off short to this jump. And so then you can work on adjusting. P.S. Did you notice my shirt? This is part of our merch store, which you can check out by clicking the link in the description. And there's a bunch of cool designs and funny shirts you can choose from to wear. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more weekly horse videos.